girls. When girls receive the right health care, they grow up with greater self-confidence and bodily autonomy. When girls understand their rights, including the right to live without the threat of violence, they are more likely to stay safe and report abuse. Many girls today face enormous challenges. They may have had their education ended by the COVID-19 pandemic. They may have been forced from their homes by conflict. They may be unable to exercise their sexual and reproductive rights. I'm extremely concerned by the continued exclusion of girls from school in Afghanistan. This is deeply damaging to girls themselves and to a country that desperately needs their energy and contributions. I once again urge the Taliban to let girls learn. Now, more than ever, we must renew our commitment to work together so that girls enjoy and exercise their rights and can play a full and equal part in their communities and societies. Investing in girls is investing in our common future. On the International Day of the Girl Child, let's redouble our efforts to make sure girls everywhere are healthy, educated, and safe.
Thank you to His Excellency Antonio Guterres for those words of solidarity. Let's now hear welcoming remarks from Ambassador Bob Ray, Permanent Representative of Canada to the UN.
Thank you very much. Anyone here who knows me will know that saying a few words is not my specialty, but I will do my best to be as brief as I can. Canada, alongside Peru and Turkey, have been long-standing advocates of your efforts. We've worked to create this day 10 years ago, and this is our 10th anniversary, and I'm really, really proud to have a chance to be with you. As I mentioned to the moderators, I'm not just speaking to you as an ambassador, I'm speaking to you as a father of three amazing young women, and of 6 grandchildren, 2 of whom are girls, and 4 of whom are boys. But in the course of my life, which is perhaps a little longer than some of yours, I've seen some remarkable changes. The last 70 years have really transformed the politics of the world, and in particular, no single social movement has been more important than the women's movement around the world. It has impacted each and every one of us, and it has made an enormous difference in the rights, in the freedoms, in the happiness, and in the futures of young women and girls. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't face challenges around the world, and we face challenges here at home. But it's also to celebrate the critical importance of including young girls and women in grassroots gender equality movements, because it's those movements that have made all the difference. And if I may say so, thinking of what is happening in Iran today, and also what is happening in Afghanistan and many other parts of the world, the cause of freedom is being led by women. The cause of equality is being led by women. And all of us have to recognize that and celebrate it for the wonderful thing that it is. In Canada, my home country, this month is also Women's History Month, which honors Canadian women and girls who, like you, refused to accept the status quo and fought hard to build a society that would be inclusive and gender equal. We need to keep on making investments in the future, and we need to make sure that the investments that we make in women and girls make a difference for all of you and for all of society. The way in which we've been able to empower women in many societies around the world, and my friend from Turkey will speak, and I can tell you what Turkey has done to advance the cause of equality between women and men has been remarkable and dramatic, and has impacted the entire region of the Middle East and of the rest of the world. We are seeing, tragically, we're seeing circumstances where women's equality rights are being threatened. I can't describe to you the number of places where this is taking place, except we all know. that there are workplaces where women are not respected, that there are cultures where women are routinely harassed. There are cultures where women are not allowed to be themselves, not allowed to express themselves. Il y a des sociétés où l'égalité entre les femmes et les hommes, malheureusement, n'existe pas. Et alors, ça veut dire, non qu'on devient découragé par la situation, que nous exprimons notre détermination de continuer de changer le monde. So, you can count on us in Canada to work hard on your behalf, to continue to fight. But above all, I want to just say one last word, or two words actually. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for showing your interest, your concern, and your determination by being here. And I know that with you in the leadership position where you deserve to be, you will in fact continue this battle, this fight, and this celebration of equality. Thank you so much.
I will now pass it over to my co-moderator, Dimitra, who is present in person in New York.
Thank you to our co-sponsors and allies for those welcoming remarks. My name is Dimitra, and I am a moderator for today's event on behalf of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. We would like to take a moment now to acknowledge that the land administratively designated as New York City, where the headquarters of the United Nations are located, is the homeland of the Lenape, who have been systematically and violently displaced as a result of European settler colonialism and expansion over the past 400 years. We recognize the Lenape's close connection to and rightful stewardship of this land, and the Lenape girls who fight for their rights and the rights of their land. 10 years after the first celebration of the International Day of the Girl, we are still fighting for the rights of the girls around the world who cannot be here today. We do not have all 193 countries recognized by the UN represented by girls here today because of diverse factors such as lack of access to information, lack of access to the internet, oppressive governments, physical danger, and more. Today, we are not only celebrating girls' rights, voices, lives, and experiences, but also honoring and acknowledging girls for being brave and powerful when facing challenges in their daily lives. We honor all girl victims and survivors who face all forms of violence. We honor girls from various areas who can't join today's event because of lack of information and lack of access to quality technology and the internet. We honor Indigenous girls for their ongoing efforts in fighting for their rights, protecting the environment, and preserving their cultures. We honor girls in war zones who might be struggling to survive. All girls that are affected by climate change and natural disasters that see their rights and spaces be neglected, and all girls who can't join us today for various reasons. We acknowledge all girl advocates and activists that are still standing up and speaking out for girls' rights, the unknown girls who continue fighting for our rights, and all girls that join today's event with the will to change the world for girls. We see you. We also take this moment to honor our fellow girl advocate, Amanda Zulu, who was violently attacked and murdered just as we began preparations for the International Day of the Girl. Amanda was a girl activist representing the Grail from South Africa who led discussions on climate justice during this year's Commission on the Status of Women. Amanda, we honor you. May her activism and advocacy continue to inspire us all and guide our efforts. We would like to now take a moment of silence in remembrance of all the girls who cannot be here today and of all the girls who we have lost to these issues, especially to gender-based violence. We also acknowledge all of you that took part of your time to listen to girls and the journey to achieve girls' rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitra, for the acknowledgement of the bravery of girls worldwide. My name is Mackenzie. I will be one of the moderators for today's event on behalf of Girl Scouts USA. At today's Girls Speak Out, you will hear 3 segments of town hall discussion between girl advocates and UN representatives about access to education, survival and protection against violence, and girls as agents of change. Girl activists will share their experiences in candid discussion as we celebrate girl advocates' important work and reflect on the issues discussed in regards to such work. In order to commemorate the 10th anniversary of IDG, we will also look back at some memorable presentations from previous Girls Speak Out events. Today, we will highlight the framework established at the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1989 and outlining worldwide children's rights such as safety, privacy, and equality. We will also highlight the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action from 1995, in particular, Section L, which further outlines girls' right to non-discrimination. As we celebrate the 10th anniversary of International Day of the Girl, we will examine the equality of girls under the frameworks established by these documents and delve into the gaps that remain in the full realization of girls' rights. As you experience today's event, remember, the call of girls from all around the world is girls' rights now. Over to Alexia.
An event that is hybrid and in which some participants can engage in person in New York, whereas other participants like myself can engage virtually from around the world, provides an inclusive space for girls to learn, grow, and become empowered to act in local communities. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child from 1989 established that all children have rights and should be treated fairly, no matter who they are, where they live, what language they speak, what their religion is, what they think, what they look like, if they're a boy or a girl, if they have a disability, or if they're rich or poor. The Beijing Declaration and Call for Action from 1995, Section L, affirmed that all children, including girl children, have the right to live without discrimination based on their or their family's race, skin color, language, religion, national or ethnic identity, political or other opinion, property, ability, birth, or status. As Mackenzie mentioned, we must keep this framework and these guidelines in mind, as we do today when we discuss the right and access of girls to education, the right of girls to survival and protection from violence, as well as the actions of girls as agents of change.
Today, I carry the voices of hundreds of girls from rural communities in Zimbabwe who convene under the banner of MTC and Beyond, demanding their internationally ratified right to access to education. To add to their ask, they're demanding an end to child marriages as it leads to a lifetime of suffering and lack of opportunities. More than 62 million girls are out of school right now, and millions more are fighting to stay in school. In rural Zimbabwe, where my organization operates, an extra hurdle is that families must be able to afford and be willing to pay tuition. This is in part because of the value placed on educating a girl versus a boy. During the COVID-19 school shutdowns, many girls lost their education due to the digital divide. COVID-19 and natural disasters such as Cyclone Idai made it even harder to track down and keep these girls in school and out of early child marriages for obvious reasons. Globally, 12 million girls a year are being raped under the guise of early child marriages, which is one girl every 3 seconds. The tragic cases of 12 to 14-year-olds like Memory Machaya dying from pregnancy complications is a nightmare to me and the people in my organization. Where MTC operates, it is home to the largest apostolic faith sect that condones polygamy and the marrying off of underage girls. We have followed and brought back many girls who pledged to be married. I'm 17 myself and a student athlete. I cannot imagine myself out of school, let alone a mother to anyone. As a 10-year-old, I attended CSW 59 as one of the youngest delegates. I was shocked to learn how many girls like me were being left behind and not playing a sport or going to school around the world. And I was horrified to learn that some young girls like me were being married off to older men, and many more were dying in childbirth because their fragile bodies had not yet fully developed. I went home and promised to be a voice for these girls, especially those who lacked the platforms to speak for themselves. This is when I became an activist. I vowed to fight harmful traditional, religious practices that kept girls behind. With my own money, I started buying soccer uniforms for girls to play soccer. Back then, soccer was a predominantly male sport in rural Zimbabwe. I worked hard with other partners using sports for social justice and as a vehicle for social change to fight child marriages and girls' exclusion from playing sports. In the USA, I started girls' clubs and raised awareness on the plight of other girls globally. Before COVID-19 shut us all down, we had a good number of girls who attended the CSW Without Fear yearly and even ran parallel sessions on girls' sports and girls' education. With the girls' soccer programs, girls' teams are now participating in the Day of the African Child soccer tournaments. MTC hosts an annual International Day of the Girl Child to celebrate ourselves as girls and put forward our demands. This is where we invite traditional, religious, and political leaders to be a part of the day's events to help us amplify our message of redefining girls' spaces. The soccer initiatives reach thousands of girls weekly, and we provide psychosocial support, mental health support, as well as drug abuse awareness programs. Through the MTC and various stakeholder efforts, the Zimbabwe government passed a Marriages Amendment Bill in March 2020 that prohibited the marriage of underage girls. Climate change and natural disasters contribute to the number of orphans out of school, therefore increasing the number of vulnerable girls. As MTC, we have stepped in with educational scholarships to help with school retention. To date, MTC has constructed a 2-room library and stocked up on books, so we increase the access of educational and general literacy material at the community level. This library is the only free community library in the Chimanimani district and many other rural districts in Zimbabwe. There is a lack of serious commitment by stakeholders as evidenced by the big number of girls out of school and getting married. Poor funding to grassroots organizations such as my own is an issue because we do not have a long history in the field. Yet, we young people are the leaders of today, and we demand to have control of our future. We need to share intergenerational leadership spaces that are well-capacited. We are tired of tokenization. Thank you for establishing the United Nations Youth Office. However, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. We are looking forward to the full implementation of young people's resolutions and leveling off the playing field. Above everything, we need to accelerate girls' access to education and their retention in educational systems, while establishing safeguards and mechanisms of accountability. Today I'm asking policymakers to ensure a commitment to the 1989 adopted United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children that world leaders made a historic commitment to. Yes, it is the most ratified human rights treaty, but it lacks full implementation. Access to education, protection from violence, and protection from sexual abuse are just some of the human rights agreed upon. But the violations of these same rights the girls are experiencing are extremely alarming. The question the girls asked me to pass to you today is, how do we assure accountability to existing commitments? We need education, protection, and security. Thank you.
Now, let's hear a message from Ms. Seema Bahus, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Director of UN Women, on the current state of girls' access to education and the dire need for accelerated growth in the area.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, greetings to you all, and the warmest of welcomes to all the young women and girl leaders from around the world. Today's Girls Speak Out Summit is an opportunity for you to share your expertise and perspectives on the fulfillment of girls' rights globally. This is also our opportunity to learn from a new generation of change makers. We have celebrated the International Day of the Girl for the past 10 years. It is a vital and vibrant celebration of the achievements and strengths of adolescent girls and a touchpoint for all our commitments to advance gender equality. However, at the same time, as I honor here the achievements already made, I must also acknowledge the deeply challenging global context for progress. We continue to witness the harmful impact of discrimination based on gender and age, and we see the rollback of the rights of girls, whether in climate, education, physical and mental well-being, gender-based violence, or sexual and reproductive health and rights. Based on current rates of progress, UN Women estimates that women and girls will not achieve full equality with men and boys for another 300 years. This is shocking statistic, is a sharp spur for accelerated change. To break this trend, we need education that reaches every child and that truly equips students for the future, safely building girls' agency, equality, voice, and power in all their diversity. At the Global Transforming Education Summit that has just closed, 130 countries committed to reboot their education systems and accelerate action to end the learning crises. We know that in 2021, 244 million children and young people were out of school. One of the factors keeping girls out of school is early forced marriage. To end this harmful practice by 2030, progress must be 17 times faster than in the last decade. We need every girl in school gaining the extra protection and strength that knowledge can bring her. We know that completion of secondary education can reduce a girl's risk of acquiring HIV by up to half. Currently, girls and women make up more than 50% of the 37.7 million people living with HIV. Girls deserve a world free from violence, harmful practices, and gender inequalities. You deserve a world where you have the power to fulfill your aspirations. I call upon all decision makers to take the urgent action required. Girls are calling for accountability from all of us in the fulfillment of their rights. I join your call and commit UN Women's full support to this call. This is your time, your rights, your future. Thank you.
We now invite our co-sponsor for the event, the representative from the Permanent Mission of Turkey to the UN, Mr. Feridun Sınırlıoğlu, to respond to the call for girls' access to education and accountability for girls' rights.
Thank you. Dear girls, this is the most enjoyable meeting that I attend in the United Nations. I warmly welcome you all to the United Nations. Happy International Day of the Girl Child. Together with Canada and Peru, Turkey is proud to mark the 10th anniversary of this event. The name of the event, Girls Speak Out, resonates with what we wish and need to achieve to enable the participation of girls as true stakeholders in all our discussions in life. I thank each and every one of you for joining us today in person and virtually. Dear Maka, we have listened carefully to you and heard the voices of hundreds of girls from Zimbabwe. You demand what is rightfully yours. You ask for stronger commitments and braver actions. More than 30 years ago, the Convention on the Rights of the Child recognized the non-negotiable rights of the children. With this one of the most visionary and universally accepted human rights agreement in history, governments have pledged to respect, protect, and promote the rights of all children everywhere to be free from discrimination, violence, and neglect. It would not be fair to ignore the progress achieved since then, nor would it be helpful to remain pessimistic for the future. As you have demonstrated us with your life story, motivation and determination around the right issues can go a long way. It can raise awareness, mobilize resources, and at the end, help make the world a better place for all the girls. And as Bob put, we, the baby boomers, have seen throughout our life what has been achieved so far, but this is not enough. I am proud to see that at a very young age, you have realized what many others still turn a blind eye to. That is a girl's education that changes everything. An educated girl is more likely to grow up healthy, safe, and empowered to determine the course of her life and future. At this point, I would like to underline an issue that is very dear to me. That is the girls' education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also known as STEM. The global challenges such as climate change and COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the world's transition to an increasingly digital economy, require a robust STEM workforce. STEM occupations are projected to increase twice as fast as all other jobs in the next 10 years. So this is where the future lies. This is where girls can and should thrive to make a difference. Dear Maka, as you conveyed from your first-hand experience, sport has a huge potential to empower girls. It amplifies girls' voices and tears down gender stereotypes. Girls in sport demonstrate not only physical strength, but also leadership and strategic thinking. If we are sincere in our efforts to raise a generation that will be the successful, courageous, and confident women of the future, our goal should be to equip every girl with the courage and skills to exercise the power of her voice. As opportunities for girls increase around the world, we will hear more encouraging stories which will constitute a source of pride for all of you. Thank you once again for your energy and brilliance.
Section L of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action affirms that, in some areas of the world, men outnumber women by 5 in every 100. The reasons for this discrepancy include, among other things, harmful attitudes and practices such as violence against women, sexual exploitation, and sexual abuse. As a result, fewer girls than boys survive into adulthood. While progress has been made since the Beijing Platform was released, substantial progress has not been made towards ensuring that girls have opportunities to develop in the best possible way. 1/3 of women worldwide will experience physical or sexual abuse in their lifetime. Of those who have been in a relationship, almost 1 in 4 adolescent girls aged 15 to 19 have experienced physical or sexual violence. Globally, 81,000 women and girls were killed in 2020. Over half of them died at the hands of an intimate partner or family member, which equals to a woman or girl being killed every 11 minutes in her own home. As Graça Machel said, there are precious lives between these cold numbers. Yet this predicament affecting so many across the globe and intensifying by the minute is set in harrowing silence. And Hereti's call for more comprehensive and collective relief efforts in areas where girls and indigenous lives are impacted by the climate crisis.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I will do the statement in Spanish, so please. Muchas gracias. Estoy muy feliz de estar con todos ustedes. Well, I can wait, so you can put that. Okay. Estoy muy feliz de estar con ustedes y me siento muy honrado de poder participar en este importante evento. Muchas gracias al Working Group on Girls, así como a las misiones permanentes de Turquía y de Canadá. En nombre de mi país, quiero desearle a todas ustedes un feliz Día Internacional de la Niña. Hoy celebramos el 10º aniversario desde que las Naciones Unidas decidió establecer este día para reconocer los derechos de las niñas y visibilizar los desafíos que ellas enfrentan en todo el mundo y que hemos escuchado en los testimonios. Cada día, todas las niñas del mundo enfrentan estereotipos y barreras que limitan el ejercicio de sus derechos, pero ellas, en diversas instancias, se están organizando para enfrentar la violencia y la desigualdad, en particular la falta de acceso a la educación, los efectos del cambio climático, los conflictos, el matrimonio infantil, entre otros problemas que las afectan directamente a ellas. Por eso las felicito. En las últimas décadas hemos avanzado mucho para empoderar a las niñas. Ya no es aceptable que alguna de ustedes tenga que renunciar a sus sueños o que se les haga creer que no tienen posibilidad de alcanzarlos. No obstante, aún persisten muchas barreras que limitan que ustedes puedan gozar sus derechos sin miedos y sin trabas. Por eso, quiero referirme a los testimonios que acabamos de escuchar de Samantha y de Hereity. Respecto a la de Samantha, lamentablemente los niveles de violencia en todas sus formas siguen siendo más o menos los mismos. La violencia de género afecta a 1 de cada 3 mujeres. Repito, 1 de cada 3. Esta cifra es una vergüenza para todos y tenemos que cambiarla. Es necesario, como dijo Samantha, contar con espacios seguros para que las niñas víctimas puedan recibir cuidados físicos y psicológicos sin riesgo de ser estigmatizadas. Es importante también que mejoremos el acceso a la justicia de ellas y sobre todo que acabemos con impunidad. No es posible que un perpetrador de violencia contra ellas pueda andar libre, mientras que su víctima, la niña, tenga que sufrir los efectos del trauma y del estigma en sus sociedades. Tal como lo dijo Samantha, debemos invertir en educación de las niñas y en invertir en su desarrollo económico. Esto es indispensable si queremos acabar con la violencia persistente. De igual forma, felicito a Jerete por la historia de empoderamiento de las mujeres que nos contó y que me encantó mucho, así como su testimonio respecto a las experiencias de los pueblos indígenas y la amenaza latente y permanente del cambio climático. Las niñas que pertenecen a pueblos indígenas son especialmente vulnerables a la violencia y a la discriminación, debido a su género y a su etnicidad. El cambio climático, lamentablemente, es un factor que acelera e intensifica esta violencia. Debemos adoptar medidas para prevenir todos los tipos de violencia que afectan a las niñas y debemos promover el uso de sus lenguas originarias. Todo ello debemos hacerlo desde una perspectiva que reconozca los derechos individuales y colectivos, la igualdad de género, respete la diversidad cultural y étnica de ellas, así como sus diferentes cosmovisiones y formas de entender el mundo. Mi país, el Perú, reafirma todos sus compromisos adquiridos para proteger y promover los derechos de todas las niñas, eliminar todas las formas de violencia, desde una perspectiva que considere los derechos humanos y la igualdad de género y con el fin último de cumplir con los objetivos de la Agenda 2030. Quiero terminar refiriéndome a la responsabilidad compartida que tenemos todos de asegurar las condiciones necesarias para que ustedes, las niñas, puedan desarrollarse sin barreras. Este trabajo debe ser efectivo y tangible. Debemos hacer todo lo que podemos y todo lo que aún no hemos descubierto para asegurar el futuro de cada uno de ustedes. Si somos capaces de lograr que cada una de las niñas en cualquier lugar del mundo cumpla sus sueños, estaremos en el camino correcto para asegurar el futuro de todos nosotros. Muchas gracias.
I am honored and excited to speak with you today. Girl Scouts taught me how to work with other people, how to solve problems, and most importantly, how to be a leader. To earn a Gold Award, which is the highest award a Girl Scout can earn, one must develop a sustainable project that will leave a lasting impact on a specific community. When I began working on my Gold Award, I decided to focus on medical marginalization and access to health care in rural communities. For my project, I led a team of volunteers in designing and programming Scout Blood, a software platform that matches rural hospitals with pre-registered blood donors. Today, Scout Blood has been adopted by 24 hospitals and has amassed 11,000 individual donors in rural India. My work with Scout Blood revolves around healthcare disparities in the poorest and most rural regions of our world. But these same disparities are exacerbated within the most vulnerable populations, namely girls and women. According to the United Nations, 81,000 girls and women were killed in 2020, and 58% of these deaths were at the hands of abusive partners or family members. Globally, the effects of domestic violence against girls are most prevalent in low and middle income countries. In healthcare specifically, girls and women are most at risk for feeling ignored or dismissed by a doctor due to gender. Victims of gender-based violence are statistically at greater risk of not receiving life-saving care. These realities for rural girls and women troubled me deeply. So I started Allies Against Abuse, a nonprofit dedicated to serving victims of domestic violence. The nonprofit first began by providing supplies to women's shelters in California that were devastated by the pandemic and struggling to support the influx of women and their children. Around this time, a family friend from Uganda told me about a similar situation in his hometown. village girls and women were experiencing higher abuse rates and could not receive medical treatment. The closest hospitals were filled with COVID-19 patients and did not have the resources or the infrastructure to prioritize or support abuse victims. That's when we at Allies Against Abuse took on the Uganda Project, an initiative centered around the intersection of rural healthcare and domestic violence in Namengo, Uganda. We began by speaking to the women of Namengo and listening to their specific needs. After countless interviews with the local women, we identified the root of the problem. Girls and women are often told that their pain is psychosomatic or just in their head. This tactic allows health centers to dismiss their cases and prioritize male patients, leaving girls and women in the community ignored, deprioritized, and mistreated. So Allies Against Abuse partnered with the women of Namengo to design, develop, and implement the construction of a hospital for local girls and women. For 3 years, we held charity events, applied for corporate grants, and conducted fundraisers. After raising over $30,000, Allies Against Abuse collaborated with the District Council and the women of Namengo to design and build St. Sebastian's Women's and Children's Hospital. This hospital accommodates up to 100 patients and is the first in its village to offer health care and resources prioritizing local girls and women. Additionally, Allies Against Abuse fully covers treatment expenses for any widow or victim of gender-based violence. My work has largely been inspired by my grandmother and the women in my family back in India who I know have struggled with obtaining basic health care. Today, millions of girls and women around the world cannot access essential, life-saving care due to barriers like transportation, expenses, and oppressive households. Just like any one of us, they too have a right to life. And we must fight for this right until it can be achieved, regardless of the presence of a man. Today, St. Sebastian's Hospital serves the 15,000 women of Namengo and the greater Budaka district. Moving forward, Allies Against Abuse is focusing its efforts on constructing the first ever operation room in Namengo. When we visited Uganda 2 months ago for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, we could see firsthand the impact this hospital has had on the village we built it in. But just during my time in Uganda, I noticed a myriad of other pressing concerns: limited access to female education, financial dependence on male heads, and societal stigma that forces girls and women into unconditional subservience. These issues are not separate and distinct problems that plague our world, but rather interconnected spikes of the same obstacle we must destroy together. When I was in Uganda, I realized that most of us will never know the suffering of these women. But today, we must try and understand. And understanding begins with listening to the voices, stories, and struggles of girls and women from around the world. To our esteemed policymakers, diplomats, and delegates in the audience, the question I want to pose today is this. We talk about many ideal outcomes, such as changing society's stigma around girls and women becoming financially independent. As real as these goals are, it will take generations to change how some communities treat their girls and women. Within a more immediate time frame, what is a material solution that will allow rural girls and women access to the healthcare, support, and resources necessary to find safety and independence from their abusers? Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Maria, for your important call for access to healthcare resources and medical treatment when needed for women and girls in rural areas. It is through work like yours that girls find the safety and opportunity necessary to claim their rightful titles as leaders and agents of change. Now, we will hear from the UNICEF Deputy Executive Director of Partnerships, Karen Holshoff, to respond to Anne Maria and Vivian's calls to create safe spaces globally where women and girls can speak their minds, learn from one another, and increase availability for medical resources. Ms. Holshoff.
Thank you so much. Yes, it is a real, I would say, a moving moment. We heard so many stories about abuse and violence and also impossibility. I like to think also about possibilities, but first of all, it is sobering and chilling. I'm not of the same age as you are. I'm a few generations older. So many things have changed, but also so many things have stayed the same. So that is for me a reality that we are facing all together, girls, women, wherever we are. We have probably more access to education, not all of us, but many of us. We can go to college if we have the opportunity, sometimes financially or depending on the country where we live. But still, when it comes to domestic violence, abuse, it is something I don't think so much has changed. And that is truly chilling. So we heard from Vivian from Guayaquil that during the pandemic it was extremely hard to be home, to be in a small community with the school closures. She was just has the desire to go back to school and to probably then she was also inspired to think of small and bigger initiatives that people can do so that they join up when they're faced with domestic violence, abuse. And the three things that she mentioned really stuck with me. So the first thing she said is speak out. But that really, I think over the generations and over decades hasn't changed. That speaking out has to be a conviction from deep down within. To have that strength to collect your thoughts instead of racing your thoughts, collect your thoughts, speak to someone you trust is not so easy. She did that, and she did that here on camera, so I really admire that. She also, second point she said was insist in education. We know that if we go to school, particularly girls, women, if we go to school, every year of instruction is a year of additional empowerment, of developing your own agency, your independence. We also know that every year of instruction brings us closer to the number of children that you would like to have. So in a way, comprehensive sexuality education and other things that are at school are part of that deeper, I would say, foundation that we have, that we need when we want to speak out. And third, she said, invest in children. That is also not enough, and I don't think that has changed enough. We are all, in a way, most of us probably will be climate activists. But if you think about climate, where are girls, where are young people? They talk about carbon emissions and reducing it, but we also need to talk about the human being in this adaptation to a new world where there is an increase in temperature. So we have to stick together and work together to change the status quo, and we can only do that when we are together. Anne-Marie, when you spoke as on behalf of the Girl Scouts of USA, you were explaining to us about the Gold Award that you do in order to get a sustainable project going. I understood you did two, one for your Gold Award and then one later on for Uganda. The big thing, and I'm doing this work quite a long time, it is very hard for people to listen. We like to be talking and we like to be heard, but to listen profoundly is bringing us closer to a solution and is bringing us closer also in our own strength. So it is very hard. And I like to introduce myself also. You did, and I will do. I'm Karen, and I also speak up for girls' rights and empowerment. I've done that my whole life. And I have passed that on to my daughter. She's now 33, so not so young anymore. She just became mother herself. And what I try to instill in her is that you trust your own intuition and that you seek and reach out to others. When you seek, they may need it, but also when you need it. Sometimes it's easier to help, and sometimes it's more difficult when you go through a difficult time that you reach out yourself. So when yesterday we had a big meeting in UNICEF, it was actually about child rights and climate change. And we had Farzana with us. Farzana Farooq is a child activist from Bangladesh. And she repeated maybe 2 times, she said, "Nothing about us without us." And I truly sympathize with that. And I think wherever we are, we have to make sure that nothing about us without us. Whether you're a woman, even when you're a young man or a boy, you have to listen and then you can give. So I believe that if we recognize what a safe space is, particularly you were referring to medical assistance if needed when you're violated, abused, or you suffered from other kinds of domestic violence. A safe space can be a physical space, but can also be a space in your head. And I think that is where the strength is. I think Vivian was also speaking about connecting virtually. At times, that is what we can do, because you can only relate to whatever you went through if you're able to tell that story. You can only cope with so many things that you're able to express yourself. So you can only move on from experiences if you share them. And that is the strength from within, and that is a safe space that we want for all girls, women too. It is beyond the physical environment. Another area that is of very big importance, and maybe we didn't speak about it much today, is that when you're on the move. So let's say you live in Ukraine or you live in Yemen or in one of the countries that is currently going through Afghanistan, through conflict or a humanitarian or a man-made natural disaster, climate change even, that you're on the move, you're even more vulnerable. So reach out, think through what we can do from where we sit to support. And then I think empowering girls themselves to influence their own lives. So I believe in if a girl gets the opportunity to develop herself in a way that she can make decisions that impact her own life, that would already be a very big step forward. So together we can transform, I know, the future for girls. Thank you.
I think that, referring to systems and systemic barriers cannot be an excuse to say, well, it's the system. Systems are made up of individuals who take decisions to behave in certain ways every day, and they are accountable for those decisions. And the elimination of those structural barriers equally relies on individuals to take different decisions to behave differently. And I think people take those decisions when they start, as we heard from many of you, by just listening. It's really not that hard. So let me say that I listened today and I heard, not for the first time and not for the last time, that the violence against Indigenous women and girls, not only in Canada but in other parts of the world, causes intergenerational trauma. And that it's real, and that it needs to continue to be addressed as meaningfully as possible for all of the individuals and their communities concerned. I also listened and heard that vulnerabilities persist in every country and every community around the world. I learned and I listened again that the commitments that have been made by policymakers over the last 10 years and previous remain unfulfilled. And that the needs are indeed urgent. I also believe that inclusion is not an endpoint, it's a mindset, and that inclusion starts with I. And so all I can say in answer to your question is I take that commitment very seriously, and whether it's in my own family, in my workplace, in the school that my son goes to, or schools in my community, or people that I interact with, it's on me. It's on all of us to behave differently, to listen, to learn, and to think a little bit differently, to actually start with, what do you think, before telling you what I think. That's really important. So in that vein, and I know the situation in Iran was raised a little bit earlier, but I just wanted to commend to you Baraye, the protest song that some of you may already be aware of. This is a song that's a collection of tweets that people issued over the course of the protests that tried to explain why they were protesting. And, I'm not going to quote the whole song, but it is so simple and therefore so meaningful. It talks about protesting because of yearning for a normal life, because of the embarrassment of an empty pocket, because of my sister, your sister, our sister, because of women, because of life, because of freedom. And then it repeats freedom over and over and over again. There is no freedom without rights. There is no freedom without everyone feeling that they can enjoy their rights. We're all accidents of birth. I don't know anyone in this room who chose to be born when or where they were born. Not a single one of us, right? And so our enjoyment should not be based on geography. Our understanding of freedom needs to be based on rights, as you have all put it. So I'll simply just end by adding my voice to girls' rights now, and tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Thank you very much for putting this on and giving me a chance to speak as well. Thanks.
Thank you to Permanent Representative Richard Arbeiter for your important closing remarks. We would like to thank all attendees, in person and online, and the co-sponsors of the International Day of the Girl Child, the permanent missions to the United Nations from Canada, Peru, and Turkey, the UN Secretary General, UN Women, UNICEF, and the Working Group on Girls for your commitment to furthering girls' rights. Whether it is through the calls to action we heard from our girl activists today or another form of advocacy, we urge you to continue championing this cause to reach the full realization of girls' rights. We cannot attain girls' rights now without the work and effort of every one of us.